Welcome to the Where Do Gays Retire podcast, where we help you in the LGBTQ plus community find a safe and affordable retirement place. Join Mark Goldstein as he interviews others who live in gay-friendly places around the globe. Learn about the climate, cost of living, healthcare, crime and safety, and more. Now, here's your host, Mark Goldstein.
Have you ever wondered what it's like to retire in Courtown, Ireland? So we've never done Ireland. This is your chance to learn quite a bit about what it's like to retire in Ireland. Today we have our guest, Waldron McGinnis. I'll tell you a little bit about Waldron. Waldron is originally from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He lived in China for 6 years and earned his PhD from the University of South Carolina, researching higher education reforms in China. Waldron spent 25 years in the Pacific Northwest of the United States. He developed a master's degree and doctorate in leadership at a university. He traveled the world doing partnership work with global nonprofit leaders. For the past 13 years, he lived in downtown Tacoma as part of an intentional community that provides transitional housing for homeless people, recent immigrants, and people released from incarceration. He has been a leader in men's work through the Mankind Project and working with men in prison. In 2023, Waldron received his Irish citizenship through his grandfather, and in 2024, retired to County Wexford, Ireland. Welcome, Waldron.
Thank you, Mark.
And you're welcome. And I'll tell you a little bit about Courtown. Courtown is a village in County Wexford, Ireland. It was developed after Lord Courtown ordered the construction of a harbor during the famine years, 1839 through 1846. The economic boost of the new harbor led to a small village, developing with fishing being the primary economy of the village. Did I get that right?
Yeah, you did.
All right. Well, Waldron, welcome to the Where Do Gays Retire podcast. And thank you for joining us today. Can you tell our listeners how long you've been in Courtown and what initially drew you to this quaint seaside town?
Well, I've been here 2.5 months. That's it. I've only been in Ireland for 2.5 months. And I was looking for some place in Ireland that was not Dublin. I did not necessarily want to live in a huge, enormous city, as good as Dublin is. But I wanted to be kind of close by for travel throughout Europe and also welcoming guests who would come. And I had the opportunity to rent a room from a wonderful woman who had a place in Courtown, which is, again, this beautiful seaside village. I'm 1 block away from the sea, so I walk along the sea every day. There's 2 pubs here, and it's a kind of an entertainment village it's more crowded this time of year when kids are out of school. There's a lot of ice cream shops, and it's just a very happy place. And so I'm enjoying living here tremendously.
How did you come across Courtown?
Really, it was
someone
it was just an internet search.
Wow.
Yep.
An internet search, and it's like throwing a dart and saying, well, let me check this place out.
I have to land somewhere, so I'm here for at least 6 months. As I travel around Ireland, I may stay here longer. I might go somewhere else. But this was my initial place to land, and it's been a fantastic landing place in Ireland.
Great. And you will, even if you intend to move somewhere, it will be in Ireland, correct?
For sure. Yep.
Okay.
I have relocated to this country permanently.
Okay, great. Well, best of luck. Now, tell us about the climate in Courtown. How does this area's geography also affect daily life, especially for retirees? What's it like?
Very mild climate here. Here we are in mid-August, and I think it's 71 degrees today. And I don't think we've gone above that yet.
Beautiful.
It's just, we've not had the massive heat wave that a lot of the rest of Europe and America has experienced. It's overcast, sunny. It doesn't rain that much, but there are a lot of clouds around. So the sun doesn't beat down on you constantly. It's perfect for either short sleeves or just a light jacket to go for a walk every day. And then in the winter, it does not get that cold, rarely gets to freezing, does not snow. So it's a very temperate climate and very comfortable for folks wanting to retire to that kind of environment.
And if we were thinking in our minds about a map of Europe, where exactly is Ireland and Courtown located?
So there's the continental Europe, and then just to the north, there's Great Britain, the Isle of Great Britain, and then right next to the Isle of Great Britain, that's where Ireland is. And it's comparable to the size of Indiana in America. It's about that big. There's a lot of history here, and the Courtown is an hour south on the east coast. So the sea that I walk along, if I were to swim, I would end up in Wales, in Great Britain. So
Gotcha.
That's where it's located.
Great. Thank you for that. Tell us a little bit about the cost of living. What would you say the cost of living is like in Courtown compared to other parts of Ireland, if you know that, or compare it to the United States?
Yeah, compared to the United States, I think it's very comparable. I feel like I live the same standard of living here that I did in the States with the money that I have coming in. Groceries are definitely way cheaper. It's really, I love going grocery shopping because it's all the same stuff, but like different brands and a lot of European things. And that's been really fun. There's a lot of great produce. Being an agricultural country that produces a lot of lamb and a lot of beef, the dairy products are tremendous here. The ice cream and the butter and the cream and the beef, and it's all very reasonably priced. Housing can be a little bit expensive, but really not that much more expensive than in America. Some people coming from California feel like it's cheaper here than it was where they were living in California. Of course, Dublin is kind of like going to New York City. You expect everything's going to be like quadruple the price of what it is in the heartland of America. And of course, in the rural areas and the smaller towns, things are more affordable here in Ireland. So I have not found it all that different. It's not cheap, but it's not exorbitant either. I was able to get a really fun little Nissan, a used car for about $5,000 with under 100,000 miles on it.
Yeah, can't beat it.
I know. Yeah. Cost of going out to dinner. Again, the price of going out to dinner in America has gone up quite a bit in the last few years, and it's probably about the same. You'd probably expect to spend, $18 to $20 minimum on a dinner. But yeah, I would say that the cost of living is very comparable.
What would you say approximately, if you know, what a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, single-family home would cost in Courtown as compared
Courtown
to the
here,
US?
probably around $180,000.
Wow, that is cheap.
Yeah. There's also, being a kind of a seaside town, there's also a couple mobile home communities here. And I think that could be attractive for some folks who would want to have their own place. And again, it's not sweltering in the summer or freezing in the winter. So sometimes, a drawback of buying a mobile home would be that, and it's not really that here. So they're very nice. Those communities are very well kept up, and there's a homeowners association and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I would say, it's not outrageously expensive here. Very comparable.
That's awesome. So somebody retiring from pretty much anywhere from the US, and living there is, would benefit as far as dollar wise and euro wise. Well,
yes.
You don't do.
What's
your
here.
currency?
Yes, it's euros here. Yeah. The other wonderful thing about being an Irish citizen, which I am, I got Irish citizenship through my grandfather. We might talk about more visa things later. But I'm actually an EU citizen as well. So I can live anywhere in the European Union as a citizen, be able to work, buy land, access to healthcare, all of that kind of thing. So
and you probably, cool. If you wanted to move anywhere within the EU, you're pretty free to do that because you're a citizen.
Yes.
Wow. That's great.
It's like moving from one state to another state.
Right.
There might be some different regulations, but you're free to do that.
That is so cool. Okay, so cost of living, we went. How about utilities?
From what I
Do you need
hear,
air conditioning?
you do not need air conditioning, certainly not in Courtown. Yeah, you really do not. Probably not anywhere in Ireland. I know a lot of Americans come over here and wonder why there isn't any air conditioning because it's generally not needed. It's interesting how things that happen in the world are often far away from the United States, but here they're closer. Things like the war in the Ukraine actually had
Yes.
an impact on oil shipments, and oil prices have gone up here, therefore utility prices have gone up.
Got it.
Gasoline is probably around $6 a gallon, which is expensive, but most of the cars are either diesel cars or they're manual transmissions or they're much smaller than normal cars driving around in the US. So that's how people save. They have more fuel efficient vehicles.
Manual transmission. Yeah, I'd wind up walking.
Yeah.
I'd wind up walking.
I've enjoyed it, except of course you're driving just on the other side of the road, but the steering wheel's on the other side of the car.
Oh,
And
that's right. You're on the other side of the road too.
yeah, I do know how to drive a manual transmission, but now I'm shifting it with my non-dominant hand. I'm shifting it with my left hand instead of my right hand. So that took a little bit of getting used to.
Wow. Yeah, I'm lucky that I could drive an automatic, let alone a
And they do
manual.
have those here, but actually most of the cars
It's
are
most
not.
expensive. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
they're more
probably really
expensive.
expensive.
Yeah.
So why that is, that never changed. Like probably, I think we started out manual also in the
Oh, of
US, but
course.
we went to automatic. But yeah, Europe is still dominantly clutch.
Very much so. Oh,
Yeah,
and
manual.
just a little aside there too. One of the unusual things about Ireland is so when I came over with an American driver's license, I could drive for 1 year on that license. After that, I need to switch that over to an Irish license. But to get an Irish license as a non-EU citizen, right? I came over with an American license, not an EU license. They treat me as if I've never driven before. So I have to take 6 driving lessons. I have to put a little L on my car, which kind of a learner, which is like a scarlet letter or something. I have to drive around with
Right.
that. I'm not supposed to drive without another driver, licensed driver with me, and then I have to take both the theory test and the driving test. So
It's
that's
like
kind of
starting over.
weird, but that's yeah, at 60 some years old with driving as long as I have, they're going to treat me as if I've never driven before.
But you have an advantage, Waldron. They speak English.
They do speak English. That's a wonderful
So
thing. And
you could learn that all by reading English. Whereas if you were in Spain or anywhere else in that matter in the EU, you have to learn the language.
so, yeah, so while we're on that, which makes Ireland such an attractive place to retire to is the fact that it's an English speaking country.
I love
And being Irish, having light hair and a reddish complexion, I could just put on my Irish accent and they just think I'm Irish. They don't even blink. They just think I'm Irish. So
How
it's
about with
easy for
me?
me just to get away with it. I just get away with it with shopkeepers and things like that. It's kind of funny. And also in other countries, if you don't learn the language, like if you retire to, Italy or Spain or France, if you don't learn the language, then your social circle tends to just be other expats. So there are these expat ghettos where, you're just hanging out with other Americans in France. Where here, the only Americans I see is when I go to some touristy spot. Like the other day, I was at the Blarney Castle and the people in front of me were from Columbus, Ohio. And that was the first Americans that I had really interacted with in 2.5 months. So all of my social network that I'm starting to build here are all Irish people. So I feel it's much easier to get integrated into the fabric of the culture rather than just being off in a language ghetto.
That's a great point.
It really is a
It really is.
fantastic reason to move to Ireland.
Maybe I could be an Irish Jew. I don't know. I have blonde hair somewhere.
And Irish people they're not all gingers,
Right. But that's excellent. It's an excellent point that you make because the language is really so important and English is the first language. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
there's also Gaelic is speaking here, so all of the signage is in English and Gaelic, and they're trying to really keep that Gaelic language and not have that be lost to history. So there is a nationalist movement to let's learn and let's keep our Gaelic Irish alive, because
what's
really we speak
Gaelic.
English because of the British and their colonization, as a lot of people, a lot of countries do. So they really, there is a desire to keep some of the original language as well.
So what's Gaelic like? Is it like it's not just a brogue? It's a
No, it's a
language.
completely different language, and it's I find it. I've taken a few like introductory lessons, and it's hard
Yeah.
because the like there's I visited a town called it's COBV. I'm sorry,
Cobb.
COBH, and it's the last stop of the Titanic. So the Titanic came, picked up 126 people in this city, and then went out and went to the bottom of the ocean. And that town is pronounced Cove.
Cove.
COBH
BH.
is the
Yeah.
Gaelic, and it's pronounced Cove. So there's a lot of letter combinations that are completely different sounding than what they might look like. So
Yeah.
it takes a while and some real concentration to learn
I'm
Gaelic.
sure. But people don't like start conversations in Gaelic, right? They're all
No,
English.
no. There's so on the West Coast. I hear there's some cities where Gaelic is prominent, but of course everybody speaks English here. Yeah,
Yeah. That's pretty refreshing.
yeah.
Okay. So rolling right along, how about healthcare? I don't know if you've used the healthcare system at all.
So yeah, I actually haven't had to yet, fortunately.
That's a good
But
thing.
in America, we have a private system of healthcare, and then we have kind of a public system, Medicare, Medicaid on top of it. Where here it's flipped. There's the public healthcare, and then there's a little private on top of that. Any citizen can use the public hospitals, can have a general practitioner. Sometimes it takes longer for elective surgeries. And like if you need an MRI, your local hospital might not have one. You might need to go to the next town over or even take a train up to Dublin. So things aren't quite as accessible. If you do need to be hospitalized, the care is excellent, and you're never going to go into bankruptcy here. They have a scheme, which I love the word scheme because we would call it a program, but they call it a
Right.
scheme, which
Scheme.
I know scheme in America is sort of like
It
this
feels a little
underhanded kind of thing, but
right.
they have a scheme, and I signed up for the scheme. So I have a card that tops my prescription drugs at €80, about $80 a month. So I will never pay more than that, no matter how much my medication
Prescriptions.
is, right? So they top it off. That's it. So
That's
it
great.
really is heavily subsidized. Sometimes it is a challenge. Like I've had most of the GPs I went to here, general practitioners, which is comparable to our, what do you call it, primary care physician. So they said, oh, we're full. So then I went to the national healthcare. I said, hey, my local people are saying they're full. And they said, okay, we will assign you one. I'm in the process of being assigned a general practitioner because the local ones were full. So there is a bit of a difficulty sometimes getting a general practitioner. A lot of the Irish medical students are heavily recruited to Australia and to other countries where they will pay them more, give them more incentives. So there's a little bit of that going on. I've heard of a person who had dual citizen. They got multiple sclerosis and they couldn't afford the care in the States, and they moved to Ireland, and now they're living in an assisted facility in Dublin because Ireland will take care of them
Because
without
healthcare
having to
is
go
not
bankrupt.
it's not supposed to be a privilege.
Yeah.
It's a right.
Yep. And then the other thing I did was I applied for a card, and now this card, I can go anywhere in the EU, show up in a hospital with this card, and I get health care.
Wow.
So I can go
And
anywhere in
that's
the
public?
EU. Yes. So I can go anywhere
Wow.
in the EU. It's interesting to go and like Google what are the rights of an EU person, and one of the rights is access to healthcare.
Wow. That's
So
great.
yeah, it's kind of cool.
And how about private care? Let's say there are long waits and you want to purchase private insurance.
I have looked into it. The private insurance tends to be like 75 to 80 euros a month. So it's not like the hundreds or thousands you're paying for.
Right.
And there are some private doctors who, again, just like you said, private hospitals that will, you're able to get in faster or get one of those procedures faster. Some elected operations like knee replacements, sometimes people will, okay, it's going to take me a year to get one, but if I fly to Liechtenstein, I can get it in 2 months. So I'm going to fly to Liechtenstein. And so sometimes people do that. They actually go to another EU country because the wait for their particular procedure is shorter.
Or maybe they could, if they had private, maybe they can get in and get it done privately. And I know private in the EU in general is quality. They have quality care as well.
Yes.
I've heard of situations where doctors in the private realm make house calls.
There is,
it's like unheard of here.
Ireland it's kind of it's like the clock has been turned back, but in a good way. There's still people who do health, house calls. There's still, you can go to the tailor, and get clothes tailored. You can go to the shoe repair shop and get your shoes repaired. I mean, when was the last time you repaired shoes, Mark? Right? Nobody does that.
In the 60s or 70s, maybe?
It's kind of when like that.
I love that, though, because you go to your neighborhood cobbler.
There's exactly that here, and it's wonderful. It's not, everything's not Walmart or Target. There's this little
you
town.
Have bakeries.
Oh my gosh, and the bakeries are heavily influenced by the French. There's a crepe store just right across the street from me right here that is run by 2 French women that is just fantastic. And so it's kind of like turning the clock back, but in a really good way.
I love that. Yeah. I just remember those days, like when I was a kid. I mean, I was really young and really, I just remember going into a bakery or, when I first started work, maybe in the 70s, I would fix my shoes with a shoemaker and then they're gone,
Yeah.
Everything is gone. They had these grocery stores where they sell fresh produce, We don't have that anymore. You have to go to the supermarket, really.
Right.
And I'm sure everywhere in the EU, they still have it.
Yeah, there's a lot of fruit stands and vegetable stands along the road. Yeah, I enjoy that part of it.
So how far from you in Courtown is the nearest hospital?
In Gorey, 5 miles away.
Perfect.
Yeah. So again, there's very distinct villages, towns, and cities. And so I'm in a village, so it's only going to have, there is a pharmacy here, but there's not really a doctor's office here. So every 5 miles to the town, they have everything there. So
it's not far.
No.
That's not far at all. That's great. That is great. Let's talk about, how about visa requirements? So you're fortunate because your descendants were from Ireland, and that's how you got, that's how you're able to.
So that's the golden ticket, right? And different EU countries have different requirements for that. I know in Italy, you can only do it through your grandfather. You can't do it through a grandmother because it's still kind of the patriarchy line. I know. But so my cousin did this several years ago. It's not that hard on ancestry.com to find your, the birth certificate of your grandfather, for me, who was born here. And then it was a 2-step process. One was to do, make my paper trail. So here's me, here's my dad, here's my grandfather, and the proof that he was born in Ireland. And then that got me on the foreign-born registry. And then they sent me a really cool little, you are now a citizen. And then I take that and apply for the passport. And all of that could be done post-pandemic, probably 8 to 9 months. So but then it stops just at grandparents. Like my children cannot get it because it would have been their great-grandfather. But if I had done this before they were born, they would be able to get it. So you have to really look into the country by country what the requirements are. Now, there is in Ireland what's called a stamp 0, which is a 0 visa. And that is what most retirees would want. And that is you are arriving here proving your own financial independence. And it does not allow you to work here. It does not allow you access to the public healthcare system. You would have to have private insurance, again, which is not all that expensive. And you would need to show the 3 years prior to coming here that you had a certain level of income, depending if you were, single, married, or, had dependents.
Do you know what that level is?
I believe it was $78,000, but I think that was for a couple. I would have to
That would sound
dig
like
a little deeper.
for a couple.
Yeah. And so basically you're here, but you're not taking anything, right? You're not taking any healthcare. You're not taking any jobs. You're
not a burden.
Yeah. You're spending the money that you have back home. You're bringing it here. And that is fairly easy to get. So that would be for retirees. That would be for people who might want to come here and care for an elderly parent. That might be for academic, if you wanted to come for 2-3 years, do some kind of academic research. And that is fairly easy to get as long as you can document those requirements. And then it's 1 year. And as long as you don't commit any crimes or anything in that year, it's easy to have that.
You can renew it.
It's easy to have that renewed.
So I was just going to ask you.
Yeah, that would be the way that I think most retirees would go to come here. It is so nice to waltz in here with an Irish passport, have them say, at the airport say, "Welcome home." And I don't have any, I can work, I can own land, I can do access to healthcare, everything here. So I really did get the golden ticket.
You did.
If you don't, then you're able to come for 90 days. Twice a year, you can come for 90 days. 90 of every 180 days.
Is it part of the Schengen group?
I don't know.
Because that gives you only 90 days within certain places in Europe.
Yeah, so you could do 90 days twice in a year. So you could, effectively live here half time.
Yeah. Do you know of any other types of visas, such as a digital nomad visa? Do they have that? Do you know?
I don't believe they do. I actually kind of am a digital nomad because I'm here working remotely. Actually, the same job I had in the States. I'm doing it here, and I just registered with their version of the IRS as an independent contractor because that's what I am. Now, if I were an employee, then they would have to have an office in Ireland. But as long as I'm just a contractor, then I can be here, and that's kind of the digital nomad thing. But I don't know, I don't believe there is. Ireland it became sort of the tiger of the EU for a while because they had Dell and Facebook and some of the really big software type companies came here. One, because people spoke English, and it was easy, and the government gave them a lot of incentives. So there are a lot of people in the tech industry. Dublin has kind of been like the Silicon Valley of the EU for a while. I think that's cooling off now. But I don't believe that there's a digital nomad visa.
Did they have a lot of countries in the EU have golden visas where you could purchase property such as $500,000 will buy you a visa?
Yeah, that Portugal was really that was, and now too many people are coming
suffering.
over, and so they're not. And I think the other EU countries are looking at that and saying, "Yeah, we don't think we're gonna offer that." So I don't believe that's a case in Ireland. So Ireland is a relatively it's not very populated. So there's 5.3 million people in Ireland. That's it. A lot. That is not a lot. And there's a housing crisis. So it's infrastructure is not kept up with some of the growth. So it's kind of funny because there's so few people, yet there's a housing crisis. Why is that? And it's funny, unlike America, which runs trillions and trillions of dollar debt, Ireland has about a $9 billion excess every year.
Wow.
And there's a lot of pressure to start putting that back into infrastructure so that some growth can happen. But they don't they're not necessarily, yeah.
It's probably in the big cities is where the growth, like Dublin,
or where they're really wanting to draw, more international
people,
workers. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So Ireland seems like the place to go, to get to the EU. All right. We spoke about language too. So that's one of the most important keys, I think, of moving abroad. The language is definitely a big thing. And moving to Ireland is pretty good as far as the language goes. Can't
Yeah.
get any better if you're from the US. Let's talk a little bit about arts and culture. So I'm a former native New Yorker, so I need my culture arts fix on occasion. What about where you are in Courtown? Do you have any arts and culture there, or do you have to travel to Dublin?
I have to travel not necessarily to Dublin, but if you look on an Irish passport, the symbol is a harp. So it's the only country in the world that has their symbol a musical instrument. So that kind of tells you the place that music and arts and culture have here in Ireland. It's, from, the Saturday night music playing at the pub to, festivals at some of the castles to, Taylor Swift just came through, Bruce Springsteen just came through, so that it attracts both, the international stars and the grassroots. Right now, they're just getting done a week-long festival. I can't pronounce the name, but it's a music festival in Wexford, which is just about 30 minutes from here. And every year they have this massive, like 50,000 people come to this, and which is a lot in a country of 5 million. And they move it around the country. And so there's constant, investment in the arts and culture and music, river dance, and folk dancing, all of that is very much alive. There's the Gory Little Theater that is just, coming out with a new play next week that I'm going to go to. Arts, culture, music really flourishes here. I am in a good place. I can get on a train in an hour, be downtown Dublin, and just, have a day down there and turn around and come back. There are, for a lot of the popular concerts, Gory will run a bus. And so I'm on a Facebook group of, hey, you want to see Coldplay? Here's the bus, and here's how much it is. And so we'll bus up there and we'll bus back, and we'll, party the whole way. Yeah, the music, arts, culture here is very much alive and well.
So do the big stars that you mentioned, do they perform in Dublin?
So Taylor Swift did all three in Dublin. Bruce Springsteen did 4 shows in 4 different cities. So that was really cool. Yeah. And for some reason, the Irish people, maybe sort of the working class kind of rock and roll, they absolutely love Bruce Springsteen here. And of course, Taylor Swift was sold out all her shows, and they were all in Dublin.
That's amazing. That's amazing. How about live theater?
So yeah, I'm just starting to discover here. Like I say, there's the Gory Little Theater, and I'm just going to that. I think last time I was up in Dublin about 2 weeks ago, they were advertising that the Book of Mormon is going to start showing again in Dublin. So they do get like the big Broadway plays up there as well. And there's, the local community theaters seem to be thriving here.
Wow. Yeah, it seems like it has everything that someone would want.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a third world country. It's a first world country.
Right. Yeah, I'm for that. All right. So as far as cultural activities, you're fine. Museums, they have museums.
The museums, yeah, especially the ones in Dublin are fantastic. They're free, kind of like the Smithsonian. The Archaeology Museum, I love all the Viking stuff from Viking invasions they have artifacts and wonderful exhibits. The Book of Kells, which is at Trinity College, which was a manuscript of the 4 Gospels that was written in 900 and brought over to, and was just elaborately illustrated. And some of those illustrations, like the everlasting knot and things like that, have found their way into the aesthetic of Ireland culture. And there's some pretty cool things here.
That's crazy. Yeah, that's great. All right, let's get a little bit into food. One of my favorite topics, of course. That's why I'll never lose weight. How's the food scene near you, or do you have to kind of travel to get to some really good international cuisine?
Really travel to Gorey. Most of being a small seaside village, there's just a lot of takeaway stuff here. There's the crepe place, there's a pizza place, there's two burger places, and there's a Chinese place right outside my door. And then in Gorey, it's a Michelin star restaurant. There are 21 Michelin star restaurants in Ireland. Of course, a lot of concentrated up in Dublin. There's becoming more and more options for vegans and vegetarians. So it's becoming a little bit more of a foodie destination and not just, shepherd's pie, although the shepherd's pie at the pubs are delicious. It's delicious. And the stews, the Irish stews and things like that. Yeah, it's not your grandma's Irish stew. It's really elevated and quite savory and yummy.
I was wondering, like, that shepherd's pie thing that they have here in the States, is it the same in Ireland, or did they even have it in Ireland?
Yeah.
You never know.
A little, I don't know, it came in a little pan, and, the meat and the savory, and then the mashed potatoes was all on top, and you have to get through the mashed potatoes to get to the meat. But it was absolutely
delicious.
Really good. There's not much Mexican food. If you are into Mexican food, this is not the place for you. It took me a while to find out where I could get some tortillas, salsa. There's only one store that has any salsa, so it's not a great Mexican place. But of course, there's a lot of Indian food. There are Thai and Chinese restaurants, and of course, French
I'm kind of surprised about Chinese.
Yeah,
a lot of places in Europe, Mexican and Chinese are lacking a little bit.
Yeah, I think Chinese is gaining ground. I don't think Mexican is. I haven't seen a burrito place anywhere. And the other thing is you don't see fast food restaurants. I think I've seen maybe 3 McDonald's and 1 Burger King in 3 months that I've been here, 2.5 months that I've been here.
But that's nice.
Oh, it's so nice.
Yeah,
it's a lot more. It's not more mom and pop, type restaurants, and
it's healthier.
Not the mass produced stuff that we get fed in America a lot.
That's great. Okay. I'd be happy with the restaurants that I have there as well.
You would.
So I wouldn't miss anything except for Mexican.
Every once in a while you'd have a hankering for a burrito, but
right. Yeah. Because we have plenty of Mexican here in Phoenix.
Oh, yes.
So I'll ship you some.
There you go.
All right. Do you have like coffee shops that you could, like in Europe, they have this coffee culture. Do you have, like, if you go into your neighborhood, is there a neighborhood cafe that you can walk to?
Yes. Here it's the same. It's that crepe restaurant run by the 2 French women just outside my door. And then, the bakeries are really fantastic. There's some tremendous bakeries. And, of course there's no drip coffee really in Europe, right? You either have to have an espresso or a latte, or if you want the equivalent, then you get an Americano, which they do call it that. But there's no like drip coffee here. There's quite a few. There's a lot of bakeries, and again, they're the small mom and pop bakeries. They're just fantastic.
Like what kind of pastries? Like
a lot of French influence. Yeah, I got an apple pastry with a caramel drizzle on it the other day. It was like super yummy. And you can usually see them baking right there. It's kind of like an open air bakery where you see them working, and then they just put the stuff on the shelf and you're right there. And it's really a fun experience. It's really one of my most pleasurable things. Like if I want to be happy, I go get a latte and a pastry at the bakery.
It would make me happy. You see the drool coming out of my mouth.
Yeah, and it's reasonably priced as well.
And Irish pubs, I'm sure.
The pubs are so fun. The Guinness is so much better. I really didn't like Guinness in the States. It felt like somebody burned the beer, left it on too long.
It's really dark.
But here, oh my gosh, it's silky and the foam is really light. It's not like a beer foam. It's so good. And the alcohol content is not that high in a Guinness, so you're not, kind of getting wasted. And it's something that's just to linger over. And the pub culture, children are allowed into pubs until nighttime. So if you go in during the day, there might be children in there. 18 is the drinking age. So you see more younger people in the pubs. It's kind of funny because, domestic beers here are, Heineken and
Right.
Carlsberg, and the imported
That's
beers
domestic.
are Coors and Budweiser.
That's so funny.
I know. It seems like Coors Light is really very popular here. A lot of
Really?
people drink Coors Light here. Yeah.
Oh, I'm not a fan.
If people are looking for a light beer, it seems like that's the go-to one. And then, of course, the Irish whiskey. So I've been on a little quest to visit Irish whiskey distilleries. And so I've been to 8 so far in the 2.5 months I've been here. And Irish whiskey, after they triple distill it, they have to keep it in a barrel. They're usually Kentucky bourbon barrels.
Wow.
For 3 years,
Go figure.
a minimum of 3 years. And then they can sell it. So I'm becoming a little bit of a connoisseur of Irish whiskey, and it's so good.
So what do what are the Irish people, what is their go-to drink? Is it Guinness or is it whiskey
I would say, Guinness whiskey and Coors Light are what I mostly see people ordering.
And Coors Light, go figure. Coors Light's from Canada, right?
I don't think so.
I think so.
I thought Coors was Colorado.
It was?
Yeah.
Oh,
anyway.
Okay. Yeah.
Right, because the mountains on the cans are the Rockies. But
okay.
I don't know. There are Rockies in Canada as well. But
yeah.
Anyway.
I thought it was
Canadian.
Canadian.
And just the culture of people, they don't have the custom that much of like having people back in your home or entertaining in the home. So it's more like the pub is the living room of the community. So that's where the people gather. That's where they socialize. They have game nights. They have karaoke nights. They do things that intentionally get people to interact with each other and build communities. So the pubs are very welcoming, friendly places.
Interesting. Okay, now transportation and walkability. Is everything pretty much walkable? Like Europe is very walkable. It's not like car-centric like the US.
That is definitely true. Although what people say that the public transit is not quite as good as some of the other places where you can get anywhere on a train. That's not necessarily true. Yeah, it's not necessarily true here. I purposely picked a small village because I wanted to walk to the pub and to walk, get basic groceries and have a nice coffee shop and, a sea to walk by. So a lot of the villages are very walkable, as are the towns. But getting between them sometimes that's the challenge, getting between the towns or between the cities. Things tend to be very Dublin centric. So sometimes you have to go out of your way to go to Dublin and then get on another train that goes to the city you're going to. So you only have to make like a triangle. Because there's no direct, bus or train to where you want to go. I have found that, getting a car has been really helpful, especially since my goal this first year is to see as much of Ireland as possible. And so getting a car has been really helpful for me. But my landlady who I live with here, she does not have a car. And, she takes the bus into Gorey at her volunteer job, and she took a bus down to Wexford and went to that big festival yesterday, and she loves day trips to Dublin on the train, so she's able to get around, and she has her groceries delivered, just like in the States during the pandemic, grocery deliveries became a thing. So she's able to function
to the grocery.
So I can walk to convenience stores here that are a little bit more than what our convenience store like AM PM would be. And there's more groceries, there's some fresh produce there, so I can get it. But generally I'll go into Gorey, and there's Aldi and Lidl in every single, I don't know if you're familiar with those, they have them on the East Coast now. Groceries, low budget grocery stores in almost every town. The Lidls have, like, you pick the bread out and you put it in a machine and the machine cuts the bread.
Really?
Yeah. So you pick you want thin slices or thick slices, you program it and it goes and it cuts the bread. It's like my favorite thing to do.
That's really cool.
Watch the bread getting cut.
And I'm sure it's fresh.
Yeah, very fresh. Yeah.
Yep. So you drive, you take the car to Gorey, right?
That's 5 miles. Like I say, my landlady here has groceries delivered, and then if she needs milk, runs across the street to the convenience store, which again is a little bit more than...
It's more than a bodega.
Yes, it's a little bit more than a bodega, correct.
Okay, cool. All right. It seems like, so transportation, do you have like, you don't have any bullet trains,
No,
like really high speed rail that go, do you have rail that go to other countries?
no, because we're
You
on the
don't.
island.
Okay.
And of
Gotcha.
course, the UK, they have I've taken the train from Paris to London, right? You can go under the
Right.
English Channel, but there's no tunnel to Ireland yet. I don't even think there's any discussion about
Yeah.
having a tunnel,
So
but
you have to fly.
there are car ferries. So I could put my car on the ferry and go over to the UK and drive all around the UK if I wanted to, and then get on the tunnel and go to France and drive around France all I wanted to. So there are car ferries.
Gotcha. All right. Now, the LGBTQ community, does it exist there?
It definitely
Do
exists
they
here.
have gay bars or gayborhood or?
Yeah, I can't say that I'm the expert on this, and I can't say that I moved here because of the
Hmm.
LGBTQ community. But from what I heard, it's a very inclusive society. In 2015, same-sex marriage was approved, as well as abortion in this, what had been historically Catholic. But there's a sense that the Catholicism was pretty heavy, that most on what most people actually really were like. And once there was a chance to be, to vote and to be more inclusive, they were instantly. Chinese
Hmm.
tend to be Irish tend to be very welcoming people, very tolerant people. So there had not been the rise of the gay culture, like the gay clubs and bars that we needed these safe spaces in order to be us. Where in Ireland, it's more like, well, you just be you, right?
It was safe.
You don't need to create a safe space because all the spaces are.
There you
So,
go.
if I were to, walk in, hand in hand with another man into the local pub, nobody would blink an eye, or it wouldn't be a problem at all. So actually, I miss that a little bit because I kind of do like those
The
safe
gay
gay places in the
places.
States. Yeah, there
I
was.
do too.
I was. In the Northwest, I was part of a gay campsite, which was just so fun. But there really isn't that here. I got here right during Pride, and almost every town had a Pride festival, and that was very obvious. And very apparent that that those celebrations were happening around the country. So I'm not a big one for the apps. So it's going to take me a little bit longer to. I have met a couple of gay men here, and they've been really friendly and delightful and helpful to me when I'm like, well, how do you do this? And how do I, and suggesting, how I could find and connect in with more gay men in the area. So I'm slowly working at it,
I
but
bet you Dublin
it's,
has
oh
gay
yeah,
bars.
Dublin and Cork both have gay bars. Yeah. Apparently in Dublin, there's a gay bar called George's that has split off into two. One's more of a younger ravey type crowd, and then
Hmm.
the other part of the bar they call Jurassic Park, which is the older men who don't really like
That's
the music
funny.
so loud. Turn it down, kids
Turn
today.
it down.
So it's kind of funny. Um,
That's pretty funny.
but yeah,
Yeah.
it's for the most part, it's a very tolerant, inclusive sort
Enjoy.
of place.
And what you said about you kind of miss that gay bar type. I would agree
Yeah,
with you. It's like for me, it's important, and it's more important in the States, I guess, because it is a safe place that you can just be yourself. Like, for instance, when I visited, Santa Fe is very open and very welcoming to the gay community. So I said, okay, where's the gay bar? And they were like, oh, we don't have any. What do you mean you don't have any? Why not? We don't need one. Oh, you don't need one? But then I still would need one.
yes.
I still want one.
Yeah, I feel a little bit like that here. Yeah,
Yeah,
Dublin again. Dublin, Cork, or some of the Galway, some of the bigger cities would have gay bars, but not so much
right.
here.
I guess
So
I would equate that to living in a suburb here in the US.
yeah,
Most of the time, suburbs don't have gay bars where the big cities do. So
right, right.
probably the same
Yep.
as far as that goes. And you did mention they have pride festivals.
Yes. Oh, yeah. And of
So,
course, the
okay.
Dublin one is big parade and just over the top. But even the smaller cities, Gorey here, all had pride activities.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Okay. How about tax requirements? I know you have to pay U.S. taxes no matter where you are in the world. You have to do that. Can you explain a little bit about how you pay taxes in
Yeah, so
Ireland?
obviously I've looked into that, but I haven't actually had to do it yet because I moved in June, right? They've got a whole nother year. Ireland and America have a tax agreement, so you don't have to pay taxes in both places. Generally speaking, you should pay taxes in the place you live, and then
Hmm.
you report that so I will pay taxes here, report that to the state saying, here's the money I paid in tax, and I won't need to pay that in America. But I will need to file, a 1040 every year in America, as long as I keep my U.S. citizenship. Now, I could renounce my U.S. citizenship, but I'm not going to.
Yeah, I don't think you want
So
to do
as
that.
long as I keep both, and I will have to file, but I will not have to pay taxes in both places.
Correct, because of the treaty.
Yeah.
But I assume that Ireland's taxes, because of the services that they have, are higher than the U.S. taxes.
And it depends, again, it's a progressive tax, so it depends on your level. I will actually
Income.
pay very little tax here
Oh,
because
good.
of, I'm living pretty cheaply. I'm renting a room, I'm not owning, I have a used car.
Yeah.
One of the reasons, so this is one of the ways that I'm seeing the country for cheap, is that I went on a website and it's a house sitting, pet sitting website.
What's
So
it called?
it's called Trusted House Sitters.
I belong to it.
And I'm doing
You
it in
c-
Ireland.
you could come to Phoenix if you want to and stay at my place.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm doing here. And I was a week in Cork with 3 cats, which, you feed them, you don't really need to be around very much. And so I traveled around, visited a bunch of places in Cork. And so it's kind of like a free B&B, actually, Airbnb,
Yeah.
because you're living in someone's house. And, now there are some where there's, 5 dogs, 2 cats, 3 donkeys, and 8 ducks. And, that's a little more work, but you don't need, I don't apply for those. So I actually have 2 more sits coming up, and that's how I'm able to stay 3, 4, 5, 6 days in one area and not have to pay for a hotel and be able to see the site. And you're staying in real people's homes. It's
Right.
not a touristy thing; it's a real thing. And meeting really nice people, and so that's one of the things. That's one of the ways I'm seeing Ireland for cheap.
The only problem with us is we belong to it too. When we want to get away, it's during the summer because it's so hot in Phoenix.
Yeah.
But who wants to come?
Who wants to come? Right?
Who wants to come to Phoenix in the summer? It's like you want to go into an oven.
Yeah.
But any other time during the year, if we travel, it's good to know, Waldron.
Yeah.
You can come to Phoenix in the winter. So very good to know. That's funny. In fact, on my website, I have a discount for trusted house sitters. If people are joining, there is a discount on there that you could check out at www.wheredogaysretire.com.
There you go. And yeah, it's a great thing for retired people to do, especially if you like animals,
Sure, absolutely. In fact, we had people stay at our place when we went on vacation, Palm Springs, and yeah, it was great. It was fantastic.
Yeah, it's really a win because then you don't have to kennel your animals it's really a win.
Yeah, I agree. How about crime and safety? Do you feel safe where you are?
So I did a little research. So 2023, there were 3 gun deaths in Ireland.
3.
Do you know how many there were in the United States?
Oh my God. I won't be able.
43,163 people died from gun violence in 2023.
That's disgusting.
And how many more were maimed, wounded, traumatized? So yes, it's a little more safe. 46,000 versus 3. And I imagine those 3 were, some sort of, I don't know, gang or drugs or something. So yes, you don't see very many police officers here because there's just not a need for them. People aren't, the tellers at the bank are not behind bulletproof glass. I actually, the first time I went to fill up my car with gas, I was like, okay, there's no way to pay at the pump. So wait, I fill it up and then I go pay for it? I mean, when was the last time we did that? That's like 1982 or something, right?
Right,
So,
when the guy came out and pumped it for you.
Yeah, so there's that level of trust, right? You're going to fill it up and not drive away. You're going to fill up and then you're going to go in and pay for it. So it's a much more, the level of public trust is way higher than you find in the States. And
That's pretty
so
novel.
it really is, yeah. And it's kind of funny. What makes news is when like there's a traffic accident, in Galway and somebody dies. Oh, it's terrible, and it's on the national news. How many people die in traffic accidents in Phoenix, and it doesn't make
happens
the news
all the time.
It doesn't make the news, and that's not really crime. But anyway, just to say that so little of that happens that it's there's no crimes to report, so we report car accidents.
Right.
So it's really you really get the sense that there's a way higher level of public trust here.
Well,
and
guns are illegal. Right.
Guns are legal. And again, there are exceptions for certain hunting in certain areas. I have a friend here that I met who like sport shoots. And so he has a gun, but it's a specialized one just for like targeting type stuff. But no, you can't.
But it's not a mass shooting thing. Yeah, mass destruction.
So that's nice. It's nice not to wake up every day to another school shooting and another mass shooting somewhere. And again, I can go days and days and not see police because again, there's just not a need for a lot of policing to go on.
And kids are safe in school, which is a novel thing.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine driving up to a gas station and not putting in your card and then putting a temporary hold for $100 until you pump the gas and then that hold goes away. And it's really
I kind of did that. I'm like, is that really what I need to do? I'm really going to pump this first and then pay for it? Yeah. So
I'm surprised they don't pump it for you.
No, there's no pump attendants. Nope. You do that yourself. And then you go in and you pay for it.
Because I remember back in the day.
That was my first job in high school. That was my first job.
They used to pump gas. I think they still do it in New Jersey. It's like one of the only places.
Oregon and New Jersey are like the two last holdouts. Yeah.
It's amazing. Amazing. Yeah. Very safe, close-knit community.
Yeah.
Overall, it's peaceful and secure.
Yes.
What more do you want?
That's the sense that I get here.
All right, Waldron. So this has been incredibly insightful. As a wrap up, what advice would you give our listeners considering moving to Courtown or Ireland in general?
Yeah, the internet makes it so easy to do your research, right? Do your research on cost of living, on housing. I got rented this place here through a website before I even got here. So there's a lot you can do ahead of time. Figure out the banking. There's a lot of people have what's called a Revolut account here. And so the Revolut, I'm not sure if it's a full-fledged bank or it's just sort of a currency holding, but a lot of people will use that here instead of like Venmo. So if like my landlady has a Revolut, so I looked her up. And so every month the rent goes right into her account. It's like a direct deposit through Revolut, but it's not like a wire transfer. It's more like a Venmo type thing. So I learned how to use that. I set up a Google Fi account so that I could keep my US phone number. And then when I got here, I got an Irish phone number. And those two accounts together are about the same as what I was paying for my T-Mobile. So I'm able, people can still call my US number and it'll ring here, which is a pretty convenient thing. But you really do need to have a phone number here. If I were to apply for jobs or other rent, if they see that you're giving them an overseas number, they don't like it.
And I'm sure. Yeah. Don't they do dual authentication? Like they text you something on your number.
Yeah.
So you would need that as well.
Yeah.
And was it difficult setting up a bank account there?
Revolut was super easy. And then they send you a debit card and then everything just goes into my wallet on my iPhone. And almost everything here is paid that way.
So
I
you don't
use
have a
my
bank?
phone. So then I did send up, but I actually wouldn't need it. But I did send up a Allied Irish Bank, and
You
it
do
was
have.
not difficult. I had to prove my residency here, which I got something that had my address on it here, and just like a bank account there. But there's no like savings and checkings accounts. There's just an account, and then
So
that usually comes with a debit card. And then everything is through the phone. Is the iWallet on the
do you
phone?
need cash at all? Like can you take your Revolut card and stick it in an ATM and get cash?
Yes, but
Or
you don't
no?
need cash.
You don't need cash at all? Wow.
No,
It's
I have
almost like
some, and
here.
it's just been sitting in my wallet for weeks
It's
now.
almost like here in
Yeah,
case, yeah,
yeah,
maybe you
it's
need
getting more
tip.
like I would say Ireland is ahead of where the U.S. is getting to that point. Ireland's been at that point for a while now. That
Wow.
everything's with the phone.
I'm
Yeah,
impressed. How about like eating at a restaurant? Do they come over with you and you give your Revolut card?
they usually come over with a card reader, and you tap your phone. Yeah,
So
a Guinness at the pub, you tap your phone. Everything, you just tap your phone.
that's the way it really
Yeah, even
should
on the
be.
buses, you get on the buses, you can tap the phone.
You can?
Yeah.
You
Once you
tap
hit
your phone on the bus?
once you hit 70 years old, then you bus all the public transportation is free. Once you hit 70 here.
Interesting. So they do have some programs for seniors. I'm surprised it's not 65. If
Yeah,
they wait till
it's a little
70.
higher here. And there are, you can get on wait lists for senior housing here. There are programs. I need to probably look into, I'm getting older. I need to probably look into more of those. But yeah, there are programs for seniors here.
Wow.
Yeah. What was the question? Oh, what would I recommend to people coming?
What would you?
Yeah, so
Yes.
through the internet, there's Facebook groups, so American expats moving to Ireland,
Yeah.
and one of the things was, well, how do I get car insurance, right? And I got huge information through that allowed me to get a pretty good deal, which I don't know if I would have known otherwise. So really use the internet and do your research ahead of time. And you can even set some things up ahead of time before you get here that will make it a little smoother. But yeah, it's a beautiful country. There are 30, in the size of Indiana, there are 30,000 either castles, churches, ruins there's from ancient
Wow.
times here. There's, within a 1 day trip, there's always something really cool to visit. Or there's just a lot to do here. It's a small place, but it's dense with cultural activities and sites, and you won't lack for anything to do here. There's really some incredible natural beauty, the Cliffs of Moher, just things that you're not going to see anywhere else on the planet. So I'm a big fan of retiring to Ireland.
I give you credit because not everyone could just pick themselves up after living in the US all their life and moving to another country. Again, I'm going to say that the language helps tremendously. That's like key. And you know what? If I were to move anywhere in the EU, Ireland, would be one of my choices. I'm not sure. We didn't really get into the winters. How cold does it get
It really
in the
doesn't
winter?
snow here. It really doesn't snow here. It doesn't get
So
to that freezing point very
that's a
much at all.
plus.
Yeah. It's very
That's
mild
That's a
winters
real
as well.
plus because that would be my only concern would be the cold because
Now
I'm such
Norway
a
and Sweden aren't far away if you want snow.
that's cold. Yeah, that's cold. But yeah, between the language and the culture, that's a great place. I think Ireland is a great place to retire.
Yep.
Well, thank you, Waldron, for sharing your experience and your knowledge. It's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you, Mark. I've enjoyed doing it.
Thank you, sir. And
Okay.
we'll talk soon.
Yes. Take care.
Okay. You too.
Thank you for listening to the Where Do Gays Retire podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to our podcast and consider making a donation by clicking the coffee cup on any page at www.wheredogaysretire.com. Each cup of coffee that you buy costs $5 and goes towards helping us continue the podcast. Thank you for your continued support.